Tension rises for a mother and her two children when a mysterious woman appears in the front of their secluded farmhouse. Who is the woman in the yard? What does she want? Well, hopefully, she's not looking for a good horror movie. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, the man in the chair is Tim. It's an audio podcast, Tim. Say something.
Hola.
That's what you came up with?
Oh, I'm sorry for speaking another language. I'm sorry.
I don't know. Hello. Happy to be here. Hello, everyone. Anything.
Well, I'm definitely not saying that second part.
You're delighted. This is complete illusion. Welcome everyone. It's the Horror Movie Podcast. We get together and we talk about a movie we watched. It's that simple. And on today's show, we are looking at The Woman in the Yard, a film that came out earlier this year. This is one of the earlier 2025 movies that we didn't get to when it came out. It came out in March, I think. And it's a supernatural horror movie about a mysterious woman with a black veil who kind of appears in the front yard of a farmhouse, and the mother and her two children who are there by themselves don't know who she is, why she's there, and creepiness ensues. That's the basic premise of the film. I don't know why Tim looks like he's the brink of laughter the entire time I was saying all that, putting me on edge. But yes, that's where we get to. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers. And of course, if you're enjoying the show, please do hit the like button on YouTube. It helps out a bunch, as does rating us 5 stars on whatever podcast platform you get us from. And of course, you can support the show over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership and get some bonus stuff. But I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, alright. Other than aloha, you've not said much, Tim. So, did you hear much about this one when it came out? Was this one on the radar? What was the feelings then?
I didn't know much about it leading up to it. I do feel like it's one of those ones that kind of came out of nowhere. Like, all of a sudden I was seeing trailers for it. It's like, oh, it's like, comes out in a few weeks or whatever. But, yeah, The trailer didn't do much for me, and then, it's one of those movies that just comes and goes. Like, I wouldn't say I heard a ton of negative things about it, but I also didn't really, hear many positive things. I think it was just one of those movies that's honestly just kind of forgotten. Like, I don't know, I'd be curious if there's even that many people that, like, remember, this was a thing. I will say the little bit of interest I had in it came from the director. I feel like I forget the other stuff they did, but I believe they did Orphan, which, I like that movie. So I was like, okay, that's not like, terribly bad or anything. Like that, maybe there's some secret juice to this, but I guess that'd be the most excitement I had coming into it.
You went to Women in the Yard hoping for some secret juice.
Always.
Mm-hmm. Her secret juice brings all the boys to the yard.
Okay. I was wondering how long it would take before we got some...
Hey, I don't even think the first time I thought of making a brings all the boys to the yard joke was when you brought up secret juice. Before that, it never even entered my mind. So don't give me that. Yeah, the director's like, I've actually seen like a few of his movies. Like, I didn't even realize he'd done Orphan. He did the House of Wax remake. He did Orphan.
Oh, okay.
He did that shark movie, The Shallows, which was decent enough.
Right.
He also has had a bit of a tenure in Liam Neeson action movies because he's done like 4 of them. He did Unknown, Non-Stop, The Commuter. I think Run All Night might have been a Liam Neeson one as well. And then he also did a couple of Rock movies, and by Rock I mean The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson,
right?
Because he did Jungle Cruise and Black Adam, apparently. So
okay.
the hierarchy of power of the DC universe indeed changed. So yeah, Weird. He had a movie at the start of the year or the end of last year called Carry On, and I remember it being advertised for Netflix. It was like a airport seller.
I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. It was, I mean, not my type of movie. It was a decent enough like, straight to Netflix kind of thing. But yeah. So they're not like, I wouldn't say it's a director that I get like excited for, but there's a handful of movies there that I wouldn't say are my top favorite, but that I enjoy enough.
He's all over the place, I think it's fair to say, to be honest, looking at that list.
Sure, yeah.
There's a couple there that are fun, there's a couple that are trash, there's a couple that are just, like, I guess if you're in the mood for Liam Neeson at 65, punching people, then sure.
Well, who is?
But, yeah. So, no, I'd heard mostly negative things about this, to be honest. So I wasn't really all that excited about getting to it. But obviously, we go through the bigger releases of the year. We like to dot the I's, cross the T's, kick the dogs, whatever needs to be done to feel that we've done the job for the year. So we'll get into it and see how we feel. So Tim, what was your general feelings on The Woman in the Yard?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't the biggest fan. I don't think it's like. I wouldn't say it's offensively bad. I will give it credit. It's relatively short, which is.
You can't give it credit for that. That's like saying, I don't know, like, yeah, like the actor's performance is terrible, but he always showed up to set on time. So you got to, but actually no, it's not even comparable, because you should still at least give someone credit for being punctual. That's still at least a good quality. This is just short.
Hey, I mean, I'd much rather watch a short movie that I don't like than a long movie that I don't like.
True, but I'd much rather watch a long movie that I do like than a short movie that I don't like.
Oh, well, I'm glad we finally have that, confirmed. I've been wondering.
We're waking up restless nights, breaking out in a sweat, wife wondering, why'd you keep waking up in a cold sweat, Tim?
But yeah, I mean, it's not like horrible by any means. I just think it is super, I guess, mid, as the kids would say. I found it pretty predictable. Like, I'm not going to say I totally guessed the ending or anything, but let's say I pretty early on, I'm like, I have a feeling I know what this woman is. And the yard as well.
Continue.
Yeah, it's a lot of it just felt like we're going like through the motions, but like, okay, all right, so here's the tragic backstory, here's like the familial setup, all right, and okay, cue the supernatural thing, all right, here's where the secret gets revealed and the characters have it out, and then a supernatural thing pops back up, and then bang bang boom, okay, we're at the end. Like, I don't know, whatever. I don't think it was like, the performances were like fine. Yeah, I guess like the directing, I didn't really have much of a problem with it. It really just comes down to, I just thought the story was pretty boring and I don't know, didn't really do much for me. So yeah, I can't say I liked it, but I mean, obviously we've seen worse. Like, I'm not angry about it. I just think it's gonna be like pretty forgettable. Like, can't imagine many people talking about this or reminiscing about it, like, during after 5 years, is anyone gonna be like, it's the 5th anniversary of The Woman in the Yard, yeah, woo, like put in IMAX,
I don't think it was an IMAX when it first came out, never mind a possible 5-year re-release. Also, what movies get re-released for the 5th anniversary? I feel like you have to make it to at least 15 or 20 before they start breaking out that sort of ceremony.
I forget if I mentioned on the show, I mean, by the time this comes out, it'll probably be more like a month ago or whatever, but like a few weeks ago, I saw the Ninja Turtles re-release that was in theaters.
Oh, yes.
And, it was just funny to me because I was like, oh, we're celebrating the 35th anniversary. And it's like, that's kind of an odd number. Like, if you want to put it back in theaters, that's fine. Like, you can just put it back. You don't have to be like 35 years. Everyone knows, like, that crazy number we always celebrate.
At a certain point, every 5 is just like, it'll do for an excuse, because it always sounds good saying something that rounds to a 10 or a 5 anniversary. Once you're past the first couple, once you're in the 20 plus, 20, 25, 30, 35, it all sounds reasonable enough to do. They're doing The Secret of the Ooze next year, apparently.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'll wouldn't mind checking that out, because I think growing up, I always had the opinion that, like, oh man, like the second one is the really fun, crazy one that the rules, and the first one's like a little dark and scary. I don't know if I liked it as much. But of course now as an adult, kind of have flip-flopped and I'm like, oh no, the first one is like genuinely like very good, and then the second one is where it gets kind of goofy. But I still have a lot of nostalgia for it as a, from watching it a ton as a kid.
Yeah, one's the better movie, no doubt. It holds up shockingly well. Two is made for children, like, through and through. And I still love it, again, through nostalgia and whatever, but obviously the first one's much better. Anyway.
And then weirdly enough, well, I want to say this and we'll stop trying to talk, but the thing that's weird to me is, like, I don't know anyone that likes 3, like, even though I should have been all over it, like, as a kid, but yeah, like, even people that watch as a kid, like, don't really seem to have much fun for it.
Because some things, like a period piece, does not appeal to children, so it doesn't work for you as a kid.
That's true.
And as an adult, it sucks because it's like just extra goofy. The costumes look worse, and just the story's worse than normal. So, like, it doesn't work for either audience. Whereas at least Secret of the Ooze does work when you're a child, and then if you have some happy memories, that'll get you through it at a later age.
Well, I will disagree with you a little bit, because I did quite like Army of Darkness as a child, so.
I mean, that is strange, to be fair. Like, that's not normal, Tim. Just to be completely frank. But as much as we could sit and talk about Ninja Turtles, we are here to talk about Women in the Yard, which, to give my feelings, which I've not done yet, Tim was too busy talking about Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, Donatello, Splinter.
I remembered them all.
Shredder, April O'Neil, Casey Jones.
Are you just trying to do like a Naked Gun bit? Like...
No, I wasn't trying to do that. I just thought it'd be funny to go until I can remember. I still got a few. I've been crying. Rocksteady, Bebop.
Yep, Baxter Stockman,
Rat King. That's a character, right? Yeah. Gecko. Anyway. Women in the Yard. What did I think of it? Oh, it's shit. So, look, I think on paper, I get the point of this movie, and I get the point of like what it's trying to do. But as soon as it started, it almost just put me on the wrong foot, because immediately it's like, all right, we're going to have a miserable movie about miserable characters who are miserable because something bad happened in their lives recently, and they're all at their worst possible point before the horror thing starts happening. And, you love to complain about, the horror being a metaphor for trauma and tragedy, and it's all just a representation. And I think there's nothing wrong with that as a tool, and there's many good movies that do it. But this is the sort of movie where, like, it's so, like, on its sleeve at the very start of the film that's what it is, that there's never any, like, intrigue. Like, I think the way it should work normally is that you get invested in the plot as a plot first, and then as you're, like, exploring and getting to know the characters more, it kind of reveals over time. You sort of, like, it clicks in your head, oh, this represents that because this character's been going through this. But this movie lays it on so thick from minute one, we know exactly what these characters have been or try to get over and what's going on. There's no real intrigue to it. The horror stuff isn't particularly compelling. There's one or two moments that I did actually laugh out loud, kind of, the movie didn't intend me to laugh, but I kind of did, because it was just laying on things so thick. I would probably agree it's just very middling for the first hour. I think the last 20 minutes kind of pissed me off a bit more, though. So I think I'm actually a bit more negative than that by the end. But, I mean, Yeah, we've seen worse. I'll agree with that statement, but like, it's well, on you go.
It's funny. I wasn't even going to bring up the whole trauma metaphor thing because I feel like I've complained about that so often. But
you have, yeah.
I mean, it's like you say though. Obviously, it's not inherently bad. Like that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do, and when it's done well, it can be extremely effective. But then, yeah, there's examples of this movie where it's just kind of like eye rolling. And it's like, okay, we get it. Like. And you're right. Like it starts minute one of the movie. Like it doesn't even give you, time to kind of settle in, get to know the characters and stuff. I think we can also kind of put an end to this whole like, I don't even know what you would call this trope or whatever, but where they have that like one, like video or like voicemail or something of like the last time they were with a loved one or had like a special moment with a loved one that they're going to keep going back to. Like this movie starts with that and it's just like, okay, here's like this thing that's going to be referenced again and again. And like, it just all feels so like rote. Like it's just, just nothing. It's all just playing by numbers, at this point.
I mean, I don't have a problem. Again, like conceptually, I have no problem with that being a mechanic. It's... because this movie does a lot with that, where it doesn't just, she dreams it, she imagines it going different ways. She plays the recording back, all the rest of it. We get that, we get it repeatedly here. Again, conceptually, I don't really have a problem with any of that. I just think from the second the woman in the yard appears, it just, there's barely 5 minutes where you're like, oh, you can take this just at surface level and enjoy kind of the creepiness and like the tension and what sort of threat does she represent. Almost from the second she shows up, it's like, well, this is clearly just a representation of this, right? And it's a weird balancing act to say, oh, I don't want it to be obvious immediately. And it's not so much that it can't be obvious, but I think the problem is that it can't just be that. Like, it has to have some fun before we even start talking about what it represents. It has to work on the surface level first, and then you can go a bit deeper and do the other stuff. And like, it's this weird thing where obviously when someone writes a movie like this and they're like, oh, this represents this and that, and it's about, someone going through this in their life, and it's like, oh, it's deep because I've given everything meaning. But in a weird way, it almost goes, it's like a 180. It goes like a full semicircle back round to feeling shallow again, because it's like you focus so much on that it feels hollow in every other aspect. If that's all you've got, it oddly feels like devoid of anything else, I mean to say. So, I don't know. I found it just kind of unengaging. There's ideas or things that come up that I think could be good, but there's also like little touches that annoy me. Like whenever the main character zones out and like sees something kind of bad, but it kind of just sort of quickly flashes to, oh no, it's just she was having a little daydream moment or whatever. Like every time it did that, I was just kind of like, come on, like I just don't, I don't want it.
Yeah.
So it's played in too many of the typical modern, we're miserable in a supernatural movie tropes, which is almost like I am sick of like bad supernatural movies, but the we are miserable and it's a supernatural is almost its own sub-genre at this point of supernatural movies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm miserable enough in my own life. I watch movies to escape reality. I don't need to be reminded of it.
Don't worry. I see to Tim's miserable status. I make sure he's miserable every chance I get. I say things like, Tim, you have to watch Women in the Yard, and then he has this look in his eye.
I mean, you're joking, but I think I was the one that was like, hey, let's do this one.
That's just true. That's true. I gave Tim the choice because I said, hey, we've got a slot next time for another 2025 movie we've not done yet, and I gave him like a list of like 4 or 5 options that are on the to-do list, and he picked this one. He said, this, get it out the way. That was your choice. So here we are, getting it out the way.
I apologize. Yeah. Honestly, I don't really have much else to say about non-spoilery
Sure,
stuff.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I don't suspect this is going to be one of our longer discussions.
Yeah, it's fine by me.
Oh, I suspect. I know you love a short episode, Tim. I can't always give it to you, but like I know you love a short episode.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you can give it to me short, you know I love it.
Spoilers for the woman in the yard. You have been warned. So we'll get into the movie then, shall we? So we're in spoilers. All right. So the setup of the movie is that the main character Ramona, her husband has died recently in a car accident, and she's actually injured as well. She's got a big brace on her leg. She's walking around with crutches. And the opening of the film is, I mean, it seems like a dream sequence at first, but we find out it's her listening to a conversation she recorded with him where he was telling her about a dream that he had about the house being finished and these flowers she likes were out in the yard, and you know, just everything's happy, but then the reality is she's like miserable lying in bed, and her relationship with her teenage son and her young daughter is very strained, particularly with the son, who's like getting frustrated that she's not, you know, making sure the house is stocked with things, the electricity's out, and she's kind of like dragging her feet to call to see if it can get fixed, but then when she does try to call, her phone's dead because she's not charged it. So there's a bit of tension, and honestly that's one of the things that feels kind of repetitive to me in this movie, is the mum and the son kind of bickering at each other until it reaches a sort of breaking point, and then he acts out, she gets mad, and then it kind of simmers down again, and then it starts to build back up again. And then there's like again, it happens a few times in the movie where I was like, you know what, I think there's an interesting story here about this teenage son who is like maybe stepping up and having to act like the parent because the mum's depressed, right, about losing her husband, right? Because that's clearly what the movie's setting up at the start. But you know, honestly, he himself becomes so unlikable and bratty with the way he acts towards her at times that he can't just be like, because I thought, oh, I'm going to sympathize with him because he's trying his best and he's failing sometimes because he's a dumb teenager, he doesn't know what to do, but he's actually kind of a brat at times as well with the way he talks back to her. So it's like, you know.
Yeah, like I guess in general, I really didn't find like any of the characters that to be that engaging. Yeah, like you said, like everyone is just kind of miserable and depressed, which I mean, obviously given the circumstances, that's like, yep, not surprising, but yeah, it never really makes it like a fun watch or something that I don't know, I ever feel like, you know, I'm rooting for the characters that much, because it doesn't seem like, you know, they're ever really acting in their best interests or, you know, overcoming much. I mean, I guess ultimately the end of the movie is like overcoming, you know, your grief.
By the end,
but,
obviously stuff's overcome, but there's nothing likable particularly about them early on to make you latch on and kind of hope for them to get through this, you know. I think they try and use the little girl, the daughter, as kind of this like easy, oh, she's just sweet and innocent and is happy when everyone else is miserable, so we can latch on to her, but she ends up just becoming like kind of a pawn in like the fight between the other two, where the teenage, you know, the mum's saying, hey, you need to look after her and make sure she doesn't like pick up a knife or something like that, and you know, he's frustrated because she's not bought stuff in for the dog, and you know, they end up becoming these kind of things to argue about, as opposed to it being kind of this, you know, like, because often you have a sweet innocent kid, it's usually the heart of the movie, it's usually the one that they're most concerned about losing and try to protect and all the rest of it, but. And there's a little bit of that here, but like it feels more time is spent bickering about how to look after her, or telling her to, you know, go away so they can have a fight or whatever it might be. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on. The first like 15 minutes is them kind of just starting their day. He's making breakfast and he feeds the dog, and the dog's sick because he didn't have any dog food, so he gave him mashed potato, which you're not supposed to do. But I mean, admittedly, if you get no dog food in the house and the dog's hungry, I guess you'd be trying whatever. So yeah, this is all the setup at the start of the characters, and it's, you know, it's fine enough, other than just being kind of very dour. And again, like, they clearly wanted to make it dour. They wanted it to be this thing where, you know, this family is completely distraught because they've just lost the father figure, like what sounds like weeks ago. You know, it's not been that long, but the sounds of it. And So, but I mean, nothing about it really, like, because I think if it's something as simple as like, giving more of the brother, like helping the little sister out, would maybe make that relationship more engaging. So you'd be like, I can kind of root for him because he's a good big brother or something like that. Yeah. And it's not, I'm not saying there's none of that, but it's so slim that it's never enough to be like, I don't know, like maybe if like he actually had a good argument against his mother at one point, maybe about the little sister, and says, no, you shouldn't do that. Because there's one moment when the mum says, what did you feed him? And he's like, whatever. And she's like, well, why not dog food? And he's like, because we don't have any. And there's a little moment where she kind of like, her head kind of, sinks a little, and she's like, I'll add it to the list. And it's this little moment of her knowing, that's kind of my fault. Right, like I'm getting mad and yelling at you, but the problem is though, she's getting mad and yelling at him for things constantly in the first, especially once the woman in the yard shows up and he keeps saying things like, we should do this, we should do that, and he's trying to problem solve, and she just doesn't want to. And I get that she's depressed, and I get that that's kind of part of the character. The problem is though, is that when the character who wants to try and problem solve, right, because that's usually the engaging character in the horror movie, when that character is like shot down repeatedly by the person in charge, that can get kind of irritating. For sure. So I was definitely feeling that at points, and then obviously the way he reacts, Anyway, woman in the yard shows up. She's just sitting out there in a black veil, and they're like, because he basically says the title. He's like, "Mum, there's a woman in the yard."
Say that again.
Crowd cheers. Crowd cheers.
Woo! Yeah, I guess I didn't really say it before, but I will say I don't necessarily hate just the very basic premise. Like, I don't know, there was something kind of interesting about like, this creepy woman just shows up in your yard. But I was kind of surprised that like they very quickly are just like going out and talking to it and stuff, and I was like, it's actually like communicating like a person. Like I thought it was gonna be a very like a creepier, like otherworldly thing, but she's kind of just like sitting in a chair, and like she comes out and like she talks to it, like they actually have conversations, which kind of surprised me a little bit.
I think what's funny about that to me is that, like, I get why the main character, Ramona is the mother's name, so I'll just say her name here. Ramona, like, when she goes out, obviously it makes sense she would go out and try and say something, right? Hey, like, who are you? What are you doing here? And she's nice enough about it. She's just kind of trying to, where are you from? Like, do you need help with something? Blah, blah, blah. And I think what's so funny to me is the idea of, like, this person just being out there and they can't really do anything about it because Ramona's on crutches, right? So she doesn't really have much mobility. The teenage son maybe thinks he can do something, but he's obviously a bit in over his head. And you've got a little girl. They've got no way to contact anyone because the power's out, and they're in a farmhouse that's in relatively the middle of nowhere. So it's like, this person's just sitting out there. Isn't that kind of creepy? And it could be. If time passes and they're still sitting there and they don't move, that could be creepy. I think the problem for me, really, is when she does go out to talk to her, as soon as I heard a voice come from this woman in the yard, and it was like this, like, I'm trying to be creepy voice, that's where it just nosedived into oblivion, and I'm like, you're not coming back from that movie. I think this thing's lame now. The woman in the yard is a great big pile of shit now, and I can't do anything about that. So that was that basically. It just says a couple of ominous things, implies the husband's not coming back. She clearly knows things, and the thing that really makes Ramona freak out is when her hands turn over and she's got blood on her hands. Get it, everyone? Blood on her hands. Just keep that phrase in mind.
Who'd have guessed?
Yeah. So that's what makes it kind of run back and go inside and all the rest of it, and it's like, we're going to stay inside and lock the doors and hope she goes away, and once we get power back we'll phone someone for help, blah blah blah, and they just try and kind of ignore her for a little bit, but the first impressions were not particularly great. What's so weird though, Tim, is that like later on in the film it introduces something like out of nowhere that's actually a potentially cool mechanic that I just wish a better movie was trying to
I
do
think I know
something
what you're
with.
gonna say.
Yeah, so this idea that like her shadow can attack, but if you take away the light so there can't be a shadow, then she can't attack you, right? So there's a lot of like closing the curtains and stuff, and it's like, oh, but if the torch turns on, there'll be a shadow and she can be there. I was like, that actually is a pretty fun little premise. I could see a whole horror movie built around that.
Yeah, so I was waiting for there to be some type of like gimmick or set of rules to how you deal with a woman in the yard.
Not the woman in a yard, a woman in there. This is just in general what you should do if there's a woman in your yard and you need to take her out.
Everyone's seen in high school that like safety video that they make you watch, like the 10 steps to protect yourself from a woman in the yard. But yeah, like this was the first time that they're establishing, oh, like here's what she can do and here's the rules for how you can avoid it. And yeah, I mean, that might have been like, the funnest part of the movie when it's like, oh, okay, where it actually feels like we're doing something, like the woman's doing something and the characters are doing something to combat it.
Yeah, and by the way, this is like 40 minutes later, this bit we're talking about, so just to keep that in mind.
But I was letting my mouth up. But yeah, like that very quickly though, that just goes away, and then we're just kind of back to the same usual stuff. And then I know we're jumping ahead, but then like she pretty much just ends up like in the house at some point, and I felt betrayed. I was like, well,
it's just supernatural. It's like, well, there was nothing ever stopping her from coming into the house. Because that's the thing. Early on, when you're thinking about what this represents, I'm like, because at one point the little girl's like, oh, she seems closer, and they look out the window, and yeah, she's moved like, I don't know, 15 feet closer, because she was really quite far away at first, and I'm like, oh, it's tightening, right? This oppressive, like, sense of, depression is tightening. It's getting closer and closer until it's going to be overbearing. I get it. Like, I get what it's doing. But yeah, so obviously, yeah, she just starts popping up in the house. What's so funny, though, is that once that starts happening, we get to the point, though, where the main character, Ramona, is just, like, going in and out of visions at random, and it's sort of difficult to tell when we're in reality and when she's like having like a weird moment, or because there's a moment in the middle of the movie where she has a vision where she stabs her daughter in the back, and then it turns out to just be a pillow, and then they're just over on the other side of the room, and it's just kind of like, oh, I guess this can happen in this movie where we're just going to do the little fake outs and lie to the audience. And I wasn't finding that particularly enjoyable, but that ramps up to 1,000,000 once we get the woman like in the house where she's just popping out of anywhere where there's shadows being created, and then we get like a whole tunnel to a mirror world. We'll talk about all that in a bit, but it kind of goes off the deep end towards the end.
You're kind of making it sound like a more interesting movie.
I know, but it's actually really dull when all this is happening. It's pretty boring. Joe, what's so funny is that early on there was a little moment where I had a prediction where she's looking at the woman in the yard. It does like a close up of the veil, right? And I was like, oh, I bet it's just herself. I bet it's her. I bet it's the same actress underneath that veil. And then not too long after that, it kind of disproved that, right? And it's like, oh, there's another actress here. I can tell she looks different. It's a different actress playing this role. What's so funny though is that later on in the film, when it gets all kind of supernatural and she's going into like her mind or another dimension or whatever you want to call it, is that they actually do play with this idea that it is her under the veil, and it like, even though she like the woman in the yard looks different, they're playing with the idea that it is really just her anyway. So I was kind of right, but I'm not taking credit for it because the movie kind of like went out of its way to say that wasn't what was happening, and then just kind of did it anyway. But that was a moment where I said F this movie. Like, that was a moment where I got actively annoyed.
Are you talking about the part where it's like they kind of switch places or whatever, and then she's like, from her point of view, seeing their first interaction?
Yeah, she becomes like, the woman in the yard. She's like sitting with a veil over her head, and that's why the first thing she said was, "How did I get here?" So like, And I'm like, okay, but then obviously as the scene goes on, you're like, oh, she's not time traveled. That wasn't like always her in the future, because then the original version of her starts saying creepy things back to her. So it's like, okay, this is just like telling her that she is really like the woman in the yard is actually her own psyche coming for her. Because basically what the movie's about is Ramona like building up to wanting to kill herself, right? That's what this all represents. It's just the trauma and the everything after her husband's death, the guilt she feels because of the part she played in it, the fact that she's struggling to deal with the kids. She wasn't really happy with her life beforehand, we find out, and it's all building. And the movie, because of that, turns like a little bit more like emotional at the end, where you've got kind of like the woman in the yard sort of talking over her shoulder and saying, "Hey, you've got one bullet left in this gun, do it." And even shows, hey, your kids are going to be fine. Here's an image of them as adults, married. They're both going to grow up and be happy. You can just leave. And it's just that self-doubt, the voice in the ear kind of thing. The problem with all this, though, is that there's still been this woman in the yard that the kids can see the whole movie. And it's fine to say it represents all this stuff, but by the end of the movie, I'm like, it feels like that's all it is, though, is this supernatural force that is literally just her inner demons. So anyway,
I mean, it definitely feels like it falls apart if you try to think about it like much more than I guess the writer did, because I was thinking the same thing. It's like, all right, well, this is very obviously a manifestation of her guilt, depression, blah blah blah, but then it's like, it is also a very like tangible actual woman there that like everyone else can see and interact with it and stuff. Like it's obviously there's something there. So I don't know, I thought that was weird choice.
Yeah, like I can totally buy again that the kids in some way can recognize this like feeling of something bad is going to happen, right? This idea that if their mother was going to do this to herself, that there'd be like signs and fears of it coming. Again, I get the metaphor of it, but it just the movie just kind of just stops trying to even act like it matters how any of this is actually functioning in the real world. It just sort of stops caring, because the whole thing at the end, when she doesn't, obviously the happy ending is that the little penguin teddy bear that her daughter left her when she told her kids to go away so she could do it and shoot herself. She sees that, she decides not to, and it plays it, heartfelt emotion, synth, well not synth, but like string music starts playing. And when she's walking off with their kids, and they say, "Oh, what is she going to come back?" And she's like, "Not tonight." But what if she does later? And she's like, "Well, I'll be ready." And it's just, that's the idea that depression never, that inner voice never truly goes away. It's something you're going to have to deal with forever. So I get what the movie's saying. I get what it's doing. But like they've been even the fact that the electricity's out and it seems to just kind of turn on at the end when they go back into their own house. It's because I got really confused at the end when they're walking back, because I thought they just left the house, but they seem to arrive back at their own house. Like, were they in a mirror world? Which I guess we'll have to talk about that in a minute. But I don't know. Very frustrated. Anyway, so the middle chunk of the movie, though, is mostly them bickering about what to do, them getting on each other's nerves, the mum yelling, so on and so forth. The teenage son wants to get the gun out of the safe that his dad had to go and threaten her, which he eventually does without his mother's permission at one point. He also tries to go to the truck to see if he can get that working at one point. He shouldn't be driving, but he's going to try to, because he thinks they should go to the neighbours. This stuff all sort of plays out, and I don't really have a whole lot to say about that entire 40-minute to 50-minute chunk of the movie. Like, nothing interesting happens in that entire stretch.
It all just kind of blurs together, and like you said, it's just a lot of back and forth of the son being like, "Oh, I know what we should do," and I mean, honestly, he's usually bringing up pretty viable solutions. It's like, oh yeah, why not just drive to the neighbors and phone them there, or blah blah blah, do stuff like that. But then it's like, he'll have a suggestion, and then she shoots it down, and then he gets angry at her, and then they bicker back and forth, and then you're just like, all right, can we get back to the woman in the yard, please? there's a there's a woman out there. Let's focus on her.
He calls her a bitch at one point, which obviously is one of the more breaking, like tension breaking moments. And then there's a whole bit with the little girl where she can't write R's the right way around. And this is like a motif throughout the movie, because when we get the flashbacks later, there's like a backwards R and a reflection at one point, and then of course it's a thing at the very end. And it's this idea of the mirror world of where and I think the whole idea is that, like, again, metaphorically, not literally, but the meaning here, that no matter how many times they tell her which way around the R goes, and to the point where the mum gets quite mad and starts yelling, no, the hump goes on that side. I've never heard of the round part of an R referred to as the hump before, but fair enough.
Sure.
Is that this idea that the R's won't be the right way around until she's okay again, kind of thing. Like, you know, like she's stuck in this depressed mirror version of her reality until she like overcomes it and gets out of it. So yeah, I mean that was that chunk of the movie. The big turning point is when the teenage son does go out and try to like threaten her with a gun, and the creepy voice is like, "Oh, your mother's been lying about what happened to your father that night." And so he comes in and confronts her and demands to know like the truth. And that's when we start just getting flashbacks. She's telling the story about what happened that night. The big secret, I thought it was going to be more meaningful than this, because when it was like, oh, she had a secret about the night the father died, I thought it was going to be more that she directly caused the accident in some way, that she was responsible. Instead, it was just she was driving when she'd lied about that and told him that he was driving, apparently.
Yeah, this didn't seem like that shocking. Like, I guess it would have been one thing if it was like she was like super drunk or whatever,
yeah.
And then she would have felt more guilty or whatever. But yeah, it's just like she was driving and had an accident, and it's not like that crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, she has that little zone out moment and she sees the woman in the yard in the rearview mirror. So the idea that her depression was already there. It's not something that's just new because the husband died. Like, it was something that was already a part of her before. Maybe you could even call it an outright mental illness, but it was already there. So, okay, that's fair enough. But like, they really treat this as like a whole thing where we get this dinner date between them where she's basically depressed because she doesn't like where they live. She wants to go back to a city. The husband says, but you hated the city. And she's like, yeah, but I hate it here too. And he's like, we just made this big move. You know, we moved everyone out here. We can't just keep making big shifts like that, blah, 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 blah. So, like, you know, like, things weren't that happy, right? So obviously that little video we kept seeing at the start of the movie kind of implied this idyllic marriage before. But it sounds like, nah, things weren't amazing before then either. Certainly not for her. And it's this moment of doubt in the car that leads to the accident. So there's an element of guilt there as well, more directly for that. That said, though, just her driving, I get why she might lie. Like, she might feel like, oh, the kids will always blame me if they know I was driving, so I'll just say he was driving. Like, I kind of get that to an extent, but in reality, it doesn't really matter who was driving. If an accident's an accident, but it is what it is. But that's what propels the rest of that, because it's right after this where the shadows start coming after them. It's almost like her admitting all this has opened up the supernatural gates of whatever, and the depression's, you know, penetrating the house.
Sure.
Not like that's a funny sentence. Depression's penetrating the house. Yeah, I think from there they run up to the attic. There's a lot of like the woman in the yard jumping at them in the shadows as the torch is spinning around. There's a whole moment of confusion where it looks like the woman in the yard's lured the girl away somewhere. So she goes looking for her, Ramona goes looking for her and goes to the safe, her husband's safe where the gun was earlier, and there's now like a tunnel in there. And she goes down the tunnel and seems to go into a mirror reality where her husband's there, and they play out the opening like video where he's talking about his dream, and she wants to stay there. But then she's like, no, I have to go get the kids. And he's like, no, stay here. And I know. And then that's when she ends up magically being in the woman's seat from earlier on. And she's there as the woman in the yard from earlier in the movie. Please say something about this, Tim. Because I don't know what I've got to say about it.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, in theory, like this should be more exciting, more visually interesting, but it is all just terribly dull. And I don't know. Sorry, but it's just like always hard to talk about something that's just kind of like dull and boring. Like at least if it was like something overly bad, I could be like, oh man, it was so stupid when they do this, or obviously if it's amazing, we'd be singing its praises. But yeah, it's just like all like I don't know, just boring. There's not much to say, and like the thing with her, going in to the becoming the woman in black or something. Like I could see it like oh sorry, woman in the yard. I mean,
I've almost said it like 5 times during this review, so that's why I'm laughing at you saying it.
I I always like to think like funny like like double features you could program if you had a theater. So I was trying to think like, oh, like what else could you do? You'd be like, yeah, the woman in black, and then the woman in the yard. You'd have a double woman
that's
marathon or something.
That is a miserable double feature. That is miserable. Oh god.
You'd be lucky to sell like 4 tickets that day. But yeah, but like if this was a better movie, then like this might be like a really cool, trippy moment where you're like, oh man, it's recontextualizing like all the their conversation from the beginning, and like oh I can't wait to rewatch it with this in my head, and like know that that's what's going on. But again, like it's not a good or engaging movie, so it's just like okay, I don't really care about this.
Yeah, I the problem is though is that it's not recontextualizing anything, because it's just kind of like replaying it with a different twist. And even if it was recontextualizing it, if this really is how it happened, I would have probably just been annoyed that they're trying to pull this shit. Like, oh, she's in like some sort of weird time loop or something, and she's both people, or it all just kind of reeks of someone thinking they're being super smart, but it feels like really watered down things from better movies. It feels like like it takes a lot of skill to do this kind of trippy, like someone's just going through sort of almost dreamlike logic to visit certain memories, and it all sort of work and make sense. I think most movies that try and do that fall completely flat and are usually shit. This is an example of that. This is this last 20 minutes was what really pissed me off. It takes someone special. It takes like a David Lynch or someone who just is able to just like make the eeriness of like the experience of what they're going through, and every little detail feeling like it adds something to it, where you're like it's making you ponder new elements just because someone said something in a certain way or whatever. Here it just kind of feels like, oh, wouldn't this be like such a cool reveal if like this sort of shows that the woman in the yard's kind of been her inner demons all along. And because of that, from that point on, when it's just the woman in the yard talking over her shoulder saying, oh, it's time to do this, it's time to, put the gun up to your chin and all that, it just feels, I don't know, it feels hollow to me. It feels like they're, pardon the expression, but they're gunning for this super weighted, like, dramatic horror about someone with depression. And I just don't really think that the characters are fleshed out enough. And the movie is a bit too cliched in places to make it really feel like there's anything like super meaningful from what it's trying to say, right?
Yeah, I particularly didn't like this. I mean, like I don't know, like you taking your own life like it's already such like a heavy thing, and I don't know, like the movie's already dealing with like grief, and I already understand the metaphor of like the trauma and the depression and everything setting in, and like I don't know, like I felt like we don't really need to go this extra mile and then also kind of add this on top of it. Like I understand this progression that because of all the depression and stuff that it's leading to this, but I'm like I don't know, did we really have to go there? I wasn't the biggest fan of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest problem the script has, and it's got a few problems, but I think the biggest one is the very first thing I said, which is it just lays on everything too thick. It's like, determined to scream at you that all of this is an analogy for what she's going through from the very start of the movie. And I think some subtlety, like actually have it be subtext. Like it's not subtext anymore if you're yelling it at me like every 2 minutes in the movie. Like, you know, what makes like I don't know, like pick a film. I mean, because I was thinking about this as I was watching it, because obviously the movie's boring enough that my mind was wandering a little bit, and I was thinking about how The Shining is effectively, there's a bit more going on, don't get me wrong, but The Shining is basically a story of a troubled person who's been manipulated by a supernatural force, right? And you know, it's like captivating. And admittedly, comparing anything to a Stanley Kubrick movie is a bit unfair. I get that. Like, not everything's going to live up to that, you know, weighty standard. But I was thinking about it, how much of a turn off a lot of the tropes in this film are now. And it's not because they can't be done well, because there are notable good examples of it. Maybe the big problem that a lot of supernatural horror movies do, and this one's definitely guilty of it, is they want to be taken so seriously. It's like we're not allowed to ever feel like we're having anything resembling fun with the premise. And that's, you know, and that can work. Obviously, some subgenres should be taken seriously always, and some, you know, maybe can't be. But I don't know, like from the very first second, just a little bit more just humanity in the characters to like make me care about them enough, but it would have been something. I
think it's like you were saying, like even just like little scenes where, you know, you get the brother helping the sister out more, or I don't know, maybe focusing a bit on him more than the mother, because, you know, the mother's just not that interesting, because, you know, most of it is just her, you know, wallowing in her grief and everything. So maybe if instead we're focusing on the son and seeing how he's trying to keep everything together, you know, when he's like, you know, a kid himself, but then he also, it kind of has to be a bit more grown up and, you know, deal with what his mom's going through, and also help, like, you know, keep things together for his sister. Like, that might have been a more interesting, engaging story. But yeah, like you really don't get any of that.
Yeah, she's very one note, actually, and obviously they spend a lot of time fleshing out like why she's depressed and like what she's going through. The entire thing's a metaphor for what she's going through, but that's it. That's her entire character. It never feels like there's anything else. And I kind of agree that maybe the son actually been elevated to more of a at least co-protagonist, so that we're also following things from his perspective, where he's making smart choice. I think that's the thing. See, if he made some smart choices that actually did save the sister or like achieve some results, regardless of what the mum was doing, maybe that'd be something to like really get us into it, because someone's being proactive, and maybe it would help show that, oh, here's a character who is trying to survive, and here's someone that we're ultimately going to learn is kind of already given up, and that's kind of the point. You know, there'd be some contrast there, perhaps. But instead we get yelling, we get bickering, we get, you know, it's kind of a miserable movie, to be honest. It's miserable. It's dull for much of the runtime, and even a couple of decent ideas are kind of like just kind of thrown away a bit too quickly to really praise them all that much. So and you know, the movie, when it ends and the lights come back on, because, you know, hey, her world's bright again, the lights light up, you know, it's that's not really a problem in and of itself, but like the movie's been so like on the nose the entire time, right, not hiding what it's doing, that at the end when it's doing a simple bit of symbolism as the lights have come back on, and then we like sort of, the camera goes up to this painting that she's done, because she's a painter, which I mentioned once. She drew the kid like a little thing on her paper, and she's like, "Oh, Mom, when are you going to start painting again?" She's like, "Oh, I don't know. When I think of something beautiful to paint." And the end of the movie is like this painting that she's clearly already done. That's kind of like otherworldly, and the faces are kind of there. You can almost see the woman in the yard's face on the painting. It's kind of like she's been painting her, you know, maybe even before the husband died, she was painting this face of her depression, kind of thing. But it focuses on this backwards R in the car, because when the kids started doing the backwards R, I was like, is this maybe that's what made me think of The Shining, because I was thinking of Red Rum. But as it went on, I'm like, maybe that's where it came from, but they're like, no, we really want to make this a motif, we want to make this like a thing throughout the movie. Anyway,
Yeah, but it was weird because then you get to the end and it's like, oh, see, like the backwards R on the painting. I'm like, okay, what do I do with this? Like, all right, you showed me a lot of backwards R's through the movie. Like, fine, I don't know.
I don't know, I guess it's meant to show that maybe the daughter saw this and that's why she keeps doing it the wrong ways, because she's like, oh, my mum did it this way, regardless of what she keeps saying now.
Maybe the woman in the yard is genetic, and her daughter may end up having a woman in the yard when she gets older.
I mean, some mental illness can be genetic, so it's not an unfair statement, I suppose. All right, Tim, why don't you give your rating for The Woman in the Yard?
I mean, going into the episode, I was thinking maybe about like a 4, because like I said, like it's not offensively bad, and like the performers are okay, and I guess the premise is fine, but I don't know, the more we talk about it, like I don't want to say angry, but the more I was just like, yeah, you know what, it was pretty boring and there really wasn't much to it. So I am going to go a notch below and give it a 3.5, which, yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know. There's just like really not much to it. Again, it just, everything just feels so generic, but I guess kind of not in the way that, like, usually when we're talking about like generic, we just mean like, oh yeah, like there's like, shitty typical jump scares and CGI and stuff, which I guess there's like some of that in here, but it looks like instead of like the generic version of like a teen supernatural Hollywood movie, this is like the generic version of these like kind of grief trauma movies where everything just feels like, yeah, it's going by the numbers, and early on you get the point and you're just kind of riding it out with them, and yeah, very little like interesting things or new revelations or stuff happens in it, so it's just a slog to get through. I mean, I guess the only positive thing is like that it's like, yeah, not the worst thing we've seen or the worst horror movie out there, but it is just completely forgettable, and I can't really say I'd recommend people watch it. There's just there's only so much time in the day. I don't think you really need this in your life.
Yeah. Obviously, I didn't like it. I didn't think the characters weren't that engaging. It's just kind of miserable from the start. And I like I said at the start, I kind of forgot to mention this as we were talking through it. But the moment that made me laugh a lot out loud is there's a point where, like, Ramona's with her daughter and she's like patching up she got a cut in her foot or whatever, and the mum says something like I don't even remember what she said. It was something like, oh, accidents happening or things, whatever. She says some sort of statement, and the little girl responds with, just like the night Daddy was driving and crashed. and like, it was just so, like, and the movie had been so on the nose up until that point that having her just say that so the mum could look sad at her, like, because she's just hitting the nail on the head. That's exactly what she's been sad about the whole movie. It just made me laugh, not because the performance from the kid was bad, not because the performance from the actress playing the mum was bad. And the actress playing the mum, I've seen her in a couple of things. She was in Station 11. She's a solid enough actress. It's not them that's the problem. It's just the script, and I think some of the execution of the material. The shadow idea is fun, but I think it'd have been better fleshed out as a whole movie concept as opposed to just what happens here for 5 minutes at one point. So 3.5 does sound about right, because I think going lower than that is when we get into everything about it is like absolute trash. Yeah. And we're not quite at that level, but we're kind of like, it pissed me off. It was a chore to sit through, and it's like it's got one mode, it's got one layer, and just because you really, really talk about that layer a lot does not mean it's got depth. You need more to give it the depth. So yeah, 3.5. I'm going to agree with that. I think that sounds right to me. So there you go. That is The Woman in the Yard. So if this episode goes out when it's supposed to, which is the last week of September. That means technically next week, the Octoberthon begins. Now, we're recording this like 3 weeks in advance, so it doesn't feel like that for us, but there'll be extra episodes throughout October. How many, we're not sure. It'll probably be a little later than some past years, just because Tim was moving house most of the summer, so we've not actually started recording as early as we normally do. But there'll be some extras. There'll be a couple of an extra bonus or two for Patreon as well. So look forward to all the shenanigans, and we'll talk about a bunch of horror movies throughout the month. But yeah, hey, at least we got this out of the way before October. This wasn't one of the October episodes, so that's nice, if nothing else. So yeah. So yeah, as per usual, like, subscribe, all that stuff. You can get bonus episodes over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership. You also get even more stream segments, which is a little bonus segment with just different topics or games or whatever we do pretty much every week now with each episode. So for this episode, I made Tim play a game where he tried to try and guess the various women under the black veils from different horror movies, and it was a fun time. He seemed to have a good. He was praising afterwards. He was like, "Oh, please, Peter, can I have more of that? Can I get like a 50-round version next time?" He was ecstatic about it. But hey,
well, let's do dudes next.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, yeah, I could do like a Men in the Yard version of it at some point. Why not? But that is...
Yeah, I was going to suggest for a name, it could be like What the Veil or something.
Okay. Oh, yeah, try and fit veil into the... I mean, I don't know if I'd use a veil again. Maybe I'd shake it up, like, maybe for the men, I'd just put like a big hockey mask over their face or something in all of them.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of like the veil.
Okay. All right. Tim's a fan of the veil. All right. That is the show, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you had a fun time hearing us ramble on about the pretty mediocre to bad horror movie. But yeah, we'll see you next time for the Octoberthon. I won't say what episode 1's going to be because at this time, I don't know. So, but there'll be something. So we'll see you next time for that. Thanks for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.